Hear me and see me? Okay, recording's in progress. That's good to hear. Um, so, welcome to this webinar. Uh, as you just heard, my name is Martin Turner. I am a Quark user like you. And the topic today is turbocharging your graphic design business. And uh, this is not about 72 better things you can do in QuarkXPress. This is about how to get more out of your business. Now, the graphic design business, these are US figures, so I'm speaking to you from Europe. I'm actually right there in Belgium. You can just see me waving at you. I'm there. But these are US figures. They were easy to get hold of, and they kind of represent the rest of the world as well. So the graphic design business is valued at $13 billion a year. There's 133,000 different businesses doing graphic design, and the workforce is 171,000. You're thinking, I'm a graphic designer, I don't do numbers, I don't know what that all means. Uh, well, a couple of things here. The first thing is that the average graphic design business on those figures turns over about $100,000 a year. You can convert that to metric if you're in Europe. And that's about 75,000 per designer. And if you're thinking, I'm not getting 75,000, well, okay, we'll come back to that. 15% growth in digital design in 2020 versus 2019, and that's expected to continue. But what is really surprising, and I was quite surprised when I saw these figures, is that what businesses in the US pay varies from $20 an hour to $150 an hour. Now, if you're in Europe, once you consider on costs and the general cost of doing business, $20 an hour is barely more than the minimum wage. But $150 an hour is more than European directors of PricewaterhouseCoopers get per year. So if you gross it up to a year at $150 an hour, that is a huge amount of money. And that's an enormous differential in any business, to have some people earning $20 an hour and others earning $150 an hour. And if you're actually already at the 150 level, then maybe you should be giving this webinar. But for most people, they're going to be struggling more closer to the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 an hour. There are people out there, of course, who are offering to do things for $5 an hour. And often those are the people actually kind of taking away your lunch, because by saying to businesses, oh, we can do it for almost free, businesses believe that's what it's worth. Now, let's look at what small businesses actually think. So 97% of small businesses say that design is important to them, but only 7% actually use design agencies. Now, you might say, well, some businesses have, of course, in-house designers. Small businesses usually don't, but it's possible. But for the vast majority, they've bought a software package. Maybe there's the subscribe to one, you know what I'm talking about. Maybe they've got one as an app. Maybe they've got some really cheap apps, but they believe they can get away with it. In fact, it's worse than that, because 2/3 of small businesses say they would pay $500 for a logo. If you design logos, you're thinking, pay what? Because the average logo costs between $500 and $2,000. And of course, there are people out there saying, I will do a logo for you for $5. There was somebody on Fiverr offering to do you a logo, and he actually had the World Wildlife Fund logo as a logo he was offering to design for you. I think somebody pointed that out and he got sued for it. So how do you get more out of business? How do you get more and be more in the zone of the $150 an hour, working as many hours as you want, versus the competing with the people offering to do it for nothing, or the people who are saying, I don't need a designer, it's too expensive, I'll do it myself. And I want to offer three things. And these are basically about you, not about QuarkXPress. So this is a Quark webinar. I love Quark. I've been using it since 1995. I've been from version 3.32. It's the only piece of software I have on my Mac since the very first day I got a Mac until now. Everything else has come and gone, and some of it's just stayed off. But Quark's the only thing. But this is not 72 features of Quark which will make your business more profitable. It's actually about you. So the first one is workflow. The second is being better at working with clients and actually being better at working with the worst clients. And the third is expanding into high yield areas. So in terms of workflow, whenever you work, improve your workflow. This is something that really hit home to me this year because of COVID. And we've all been doing more web stuff, and not just Zoom, but webcasts and webinars. And I do a weekly 15-minute webcast with some other people. And I learned pretty quickly that any task you do over and over again, if you can get that down from 5 seconds to 1 second, or even automate it, then you turn all day editing into just half a day. Of course, graphic design is so fast that, just getting that wire out of the way, it's so fast that maybe you think, well, actually, I don't need that anymore. You know, back in the old days with maybe PageMaker or Ventura Publisher or very early versions of Quark, and computers were really slow, you had to do everything you possibly could. Actually, workflow can still really do a great deal for you. But the other thing you might be thinking is, if I'm being paid by the hour, a faster workflow means the client gets the profit and I don't. We'll come back to that at the end. Before we go any further, I want to say that the way you are using QuarkXPress is already the right way. So do not come out of this webinar thinking, I'm doing it wrong, I've got to be using this feature and that feature. Quark has done bullets for, since about version 10, I think, bulleted lists. There are still some people doing it the old way with Control-Alt-Shift-Z or Control-Alt-Shift-Q and a dingbat or whatever, and typing them in using indent. And if that's what you do and it works for you, that's right. There is no obligation on you to use any feature of Quark which is inconvenient for you. The features are there for you. You do not belong to the software. Unless you want to write books about it, you do not need to explore every possible feature. However, as you work, you should be able to identify things if only this could be done more easily. Now, I'm sure most of you are already using style sheets. They've been in Quark since really the earliest days, but certainly on 3.32. Working with style sheets is kind of the first thing about automation. And if you're still formatting every bit of text kind of manually, maybe because some other software you used did that, and certainly people coming from Word might do that, then getting into style sheets is going to be the first thing to do. But if you're already using style sheets, then consider using item styles, because item styles do for boxes and lines and other things what style sheets did for text. And when the client wants to change something, you can change everything, not just across one layout, but across a whole suite of layouts by just changing the item style. If you haven't explored that, go for that. If you already use those, then consider using conditional styles, because conditional styles are really powerful. You can format entire books just using conditional styles. If you've used grep styles on another product and you think, well, these are hideously difficult, they actually are, but conditional styles are much easier. They are much more visual, they're much more intuitive. Now, I need to say that you need to try these out. You are still doing automation. You need to try them out on small bits of text. We're working right now on a translation of a very famous book. If I tell you that book has got verse numbers, you probably guessed what book that is. When you're doing a 66-page block of text, which has got thousands of these things that's got to be done on, try it out on a small bit first, because it'll take 10 minutes to work through that huge block of text. Now, it would take all day doing it by hand, but it still takes 10 minutes. Go and get a cup of coffee. But this is not a time to do it, then realize it didn't do what you wanted, and then do something else and so on. So automation can really help you. If you're already using conditional styles, then consider job jackets. Now, we did a video about job jackets. I'm not going to explain them now, but job jackets are kind of like meta styles, which bring everything in, and you can organize entire brands and suites of things together. Again, they can do as much or as little as you want, and you shouldn't feel bound to use any feature you don't like. But if you've not looked at job jackets and you're already using all the other different features like table styles and so on, this could be the thing that helps you improve your workflow more. But it could be you want to do refinements. For example, I used to work for the NHS, National Health Service in the UK, the UK's favourite organisation, and the NHS font is Frutiger. Some people say Frutiger, they're wrong, but they can still say it. Unfortunately, the word or the letters NHS in capitals don't look great in Frutiger because the kerning's wrong, just for that combination. Now, in Quark, you can actually reset the kerning for a particular pair. Well, if you're working in Dutch, which I often am these days because I live in Belgium, the IJ pairing is often wrong in a lot of fonts, and you can just set that once and then export that and import that for that font. It's only for that exact font, that exact weight, so we're not messing anything around. Further refinements you can do, which will save you a huge amount of time as you improve your workflow, and just try to improve one thing at a time, is hyphenation. Quark really upped the game with hyphenation, and nobody else has caught up yet. You've got these different levels of hyphenation. I've got to say that I've had more trouble with clients, both external clients and internal clients, on hyphenation than any other thing in branding and design. Clients never seem to see hyphenation problems in other books, but as soon as you show their document, they're like, what's all this going on? I don't want this. You can refine it rather than explain to the client why it's going to be fine. And you can get it, and once you've done that, that client will be happy forever. You can specify that per client, or you can import them. Well, let's move on, because improving your workflow is one thing, but the second thing is you've got to make the most of the most difficult clients. Your most difficult clients are, to some extent, possibly your best clients, because these are people who, once they've found somebody who they can work with, will stick with you like glue, and they will tell everybody else that you are the only designer they've ever found who can actually understand them. But 3 ways to do that. First off, and this is not about software at all, it's about you, be the most exciting person they talk to that day. Now, you might say, well, I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert, that's why I'm doing a design thing. You can still be exciting if you keep learning. So if you decided what you did in 1972 and explained to the client all the time how in 1972 we were still living in hot metal and then we had to move into Linotronics and that was terrible, what the client is hearing is that you're the past, not the future. If you're learning all the time, it'll spill out into your conversations. Learn about what your client does. Get interested, but be excited by new developments, not just in design, but by in everything. Okay, more on a software basis. You've got to learn to work the way the client works. So most clients, I guess some of them will have prepared something in some graphic design software, and often you've got to kind of manage their expectations and not use that. But most clients are using Microsoft Office stuff. They will provide stuff to you as Excel and Word. And of course, they'll provide their charts to you in Excel format with Excel basic default formatting. It's of course much worse if they've already played with the formatting themselves, and often you've just got to reset it. But it always looks rubbish because it always looks like it's come straight out of Excel, and sometimes people don't even remove the kind of the borderlines because they can't copy and paste. So in Quark, you can simply copy from any vector, as long as it's come through as a vector, not as an image. You can then copy it, convert to native objects, ungroup, and then restyle it to match their brand. I just invented that particular brand on there for this example, but that takes about 3 or 4 minutes. If you had to remake them in Quark, which is what we used to do, to make them look good for an annual report, it's taking like 10 or 20 minutes, and the same is true for other software packages. This means that if the client is giving you 100 of these things, you can work through them quite quickly and get them all looking right. And when they change one at the last minute, you can still do that. Now, even more than changing graphics at the last minute, clients love changing text. And many clients will say to you, I want to have my text back in Word so I can edit it. And you try to explain to them that the layout will not work in Word. You can't convert it to Word. You've tried converting it through Acrobat into Word and it just comes out as a mess and you can't bring it back in. Don't do that. Rather, say to the client, I can give you your document in Word with all the style sheets. And if you don't change the style sheets, then it'll come back in correctly formatted. Or I can even show you which styles to click that it'll then auto-format. So the nightmare of any graphic design job is clients keeping changing their minds, but they will. If you only work with clients who don't change their minds, you will not work with many clients. Being the person who can manage their workflow better than they can is crucial. Another thing you can do is work on actual content automation. So this is a project we've been working on for 2 years about the Het Lamgods. It's a very famous painting in the city of Ghent in Belgium. We've got this exhibition with 46 enormous panels. They're like 2 meters by 1.8 meters. You can convert that to dollars if you want to. And it's, the people doing it are passionate. And at a particular point, you've got to sit with them. And nobody wants people sitting with them. Nobody wants the client over their shoulder. But sometimes you've got to do this and say, okay, we're going to change one word in the title. You can automate this. So when you've got a suite of documents, you can change it, so either with a content variable or with a shared content. You can change it in one place and it changes everywhere. And when you do that, the client will think you are a magician, because suddenly they haven't got to check it again in 45 different places. They know it's going to be the same everywhere. And if you're not using this shared content, it is magnificent for managing what they do. Helping to manage the client's chaos is crucial to being the person who can work with the difficult clients. And the same is true for when you end up with documents and names like final version, final version, final version 2, final version 10. There's a meme going around Facebook from a company that wants to sell you a file organization piece of software. And everybody knows this problem, that you think you've done it, and then the client comes back and says, oh, I just talked to somebody else, and we've got to have it just a little bit different. Quark can automate that for you as well. If you turn on auto backups, it will simply create a numbered file for every single different version. And the result of that is that when, has happened to me once, an extremely expensive document, which is worth millions to the client, and they came back and said, you know, all the stuff we talked about for the last 4 days, we've been back to the committee, they do not want that, can we go back to 8 versions ago? And they were all there waiting for me. You can even have them go into a different folder so they're not in your way. Finally, the third area which I want to talk about is expanding into high-end, high-yield work, because ultimately the guys getting $150 an hour are not doing the same things as the guys getting $20 an hour. They are focusing on high-yield work. Now, in the 1980s, that was WYSIWYG design. Remember WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. I don't know if you recall what was before WYSIWYG. I just caught the very tag end of it. I was never really involved in it myself, but we had to cast off type. But that was a business, casting off type. You had to calculate the number of words and then type them out and so on. Once you got into using Ventura Publisher or PageMaker or even better QuarkXPress, it was so much easier. And that was the high-end work then. And Chris, this was a golden age for designers, because the designer could do everything which previously had to go to typesetters as a separate thing. Then in the 90s, the high-end work was PDF. Suddenly everybody wanted PDF, because for the first time they could send their document and it would go to the client in the correct fonts, with the graphics in the correct order, and without crashing anybody's computer. It was brilliant. From the 2000s, people wanted flat websites, and after flat websites, they wanted CMS websites, so content management systems, Drupal, Concrete 5, WordPress, Joomla, and a number of other things. And at that time, Quark actually could do flat websites. They were kind of a bit clunky, But at a particular point, people just got into choosing templates, and every website looked the same. And I know lots of clients who spent 4 or 5 hours trying to choose a WordPress template, and they never find anything that looks like their brand. They just assume that if there's a template, there must be one that looks like their brand somewhere. And of course, there isn't any more than there's a template clip art of their brand. The last big website I was involved in, we spent a year on it. It cost $300,000, and we spent the first 8 months just doing visualizations of it. We're going to come back to that in a second. But then in the 2010s, what everybody wanted was apps and ebooks. Ebooks were the thing with those flip pages and everything, and apps even more. I want an app for my iPhone, and actually Quark could do and can do apps and ebooks. The problem is that according to Apple, 70 or 80% of all the apps on the App Store for the iPhone or the iPad are what they call zombie apps. They are only downloaded by the people who actually commissioned them. And I've been involved in a number of app projects, some with very big clients, and in retrospect, if I knew then what I know now, I would have said, do not waste your money. Because unless your app does something remarkable for the client or for your end customer, they will look at it and they will just delete it. And you'll be paying every year to update it. And you can still do those kind of apps in QuarkXPress, but what people want now is flex websites. Flex websites are where things are now. Flex website, if you don't know, is where it changes its size and shape to match your phone or your iPad or your computer screen or something else, or you just move it on the screen and it changes. Let me show you one from this Lamb of God project we're working on. So this is Quark's Flex function, and you can't just press a button and flexify it, because Quark Flex is quite an interesting technology that's got all its own rules. But what you can do is just pull in all your assets, all your graphics and text from your other suite of Quark documents, and it will follow your style sheets and use your fonts and your colors and everything else. So all the work only has to be done once. And you can see here, this is just on the Quark screen. You can pull it backwards and forwards, and I've done 3 things, and it automatically moves it around. You press one button and it will preview it in Safari or your favorite browser. And you can show the client that. And you can either, we actually do final, fully fledged websites this way, because I can make a website in about 10 minutes, which would otherwise take an external designer 2 or 3 days to do. And often that's enough. People don't want deep content now with its own discussion forum and its blogs and everything. That is so 2003. What people want now is something which works on their mobile phone and connects to the Facebook page, and if you're using Twitter or whatever else it is. All this you can do straight in Quark. If you're not doing that, then what's going to happen is you're going to finish your design, and the client's happy with the design. You've worked on it for several weeks. You've got a whole suite of print documents ready. And then the client says, right, we're going to have to get a website done as well. And they go up to the web programmer, and the web programmer says, yeah, I'm a designer. I can do PHP, I can do Squirrel, I can do anything. And actually they can't. What they can do is they can make websites look like all the other websites they know how to do. And so the client then comes back to you and says, we're going to need to change the look to match the website. Have you had this happen to you? This is the most disappointing thing in the world, where you've done all the work to make the design perfect, and now you've got to change it to look like a website that doesn't even look that great in the first place. And so you end up doing that work again. And you also know that web designer is probably being paid more per hour than you are, because web, it's more complicated. You can break through that by producing a flex website. And even if they want something a lot deeper, you can do all the visualization with them in Quark. So you hand over to the web guys finished files, which are in HTML5, they're clean code, and they can then be converted into a CMS for WordPress and so on. And that's not something that I would say as a designer you want to get into. That's quite a complicated business. I have done it. It's definitely possible. It's something that the techie guys can work on. These guys are great at tech. They're not actually that great at design. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, I want to finish up, and I know this has been like a real gallop, and I've been talking very fast. But design is more susceptible to word of mouth than almost any other profession I've come across. And that's partly because clients don't know what good design is. And so they're kind of hoping that somebody can say to them, oh yeah, that's really good. Oh, that's terrible. You've been sold a dog there. Um, so being the person that gets recommended is really important. Now, I've got three things about turbocharging your work, which are just summaries of what I previously said. So first off, I talked about improving your workflow. And the reason for that is you've got to be willing to bet on your own skill. And by that I mean, you've got to be ready to do fixed price jobs. Now, we talked about being paid by the hour. And a lot of design jobs are paid by the hour. But one of the reasons small businesses, 93% of them, do not go to design agencies is because paying by the hour terrifies small businesses. A small business doesn't want to get into a relationship where they don't know how much it's going to cost at the beginning, and it might just get more and more expensive, and they may have to call it quits and then have nothing at all. So if you say to them, actually, I can do your suite of visual identity and your 4 brochures on your business card, and it's going to be this price, then they'll be very happy with that. The price might seem a lot to you, although work out the hour cost first. But if you do fixed price jobs, the more that you get your workflow right, the more profit you make. Now, there is also a time for doing by the hour, and that's when you've got a creative relationship with the client, you're working together, you understand each other. But certainly in the beginning, fixed price can open doors. When I started my branding business, my second client recommended to me by my first client, I originally priced out 2 brands for them, and the price was about $30,000. In the end, they spent more than $100,000 with me, which was very nice of them. But they came back for more work. But actually, they'd spent years, and this was a company that sold branding to other people. They'd spent years trying to renew their logo, not getting anywhere. Giving them the confidence that it was going to cost this much was what pushed them over from it's never going to happen to let's do it. And in the end, we won Brand of the Year for that brand in stationery in the UK, and also Marketing Campaign of the Year. By the way, I do not disclose who my clients are because I don't think they want you to know that. But if you go and search for Brand of the Year in about 2014-15 for stationery, you can find out who they were. Bet on your own skill. There's a time for per hour billing, there's a time for fixed price. Fixed price, you're betting on your ability to do it, and to do it right, and do it in the time. Second, you've got to be the person that your most difficult clients can't stop talking about. A difficult client is somebody who has never previously met someone who could satisfy them. Once you've satisfied them, they will not stop talking about you. And I've actually been that difficult client for a couple of companies. I felt deserved it. And they were still talking about me years later, because once we got down and they finally delivered what I wanted, we were able to do big conferences, explaining that to everybody else, because they weren't delivering to anybody what they wanted. Once they got it from me, they could do it for everybody. Be the person they can't stop talking about. And actually, I carried on recommending them for years. And then be the person who can say yes. And one of the reasons why I'm still using Quark today is because Quark has stayed ahead of the game. Those other packages will have Flex websites in their capability set within 2 or 3 or 4 years. But in 2 or 3 or 4 years, there'll be other things that everybody wants. Quark's got it today. Being the person who can say yes is often the key to not just getting the jobs, but getting the profitable end of the work. The profitable end is almost always the bits that other people have to say no to. Well, thank you very much for listening to that. I'm going to hand you back to Bunny now and leave her to take us further.
Thank you so much, Martin. If anyone has any questions, we are going to open the floor to Q&A. You can raise your hand, or you can enter that question in the chat. Looks like Peter raised his hands and he may have a question. So Peter, I'm going to unmute you. Peter, are you there?
I'm here. I was actually raising my hand because I had a blank screen, but that soon resolved. So I haven't really got a question. I just know I've been using Quark since 1987, must have been version 1, which was exciting. But no, very, very interesting. I use it mainly for print. And I'm interested in the web aspect of it. Because I've been using all sorts of things, and WordPress was probably the most frustrating one ever. So I'm going to explore it. So thank you very much for that tip.
Okay, you're welcome. We're glad you're here, and thanks for being a longtime user.
I've got to say, that's really exciting to hear that about print. I love print, and lots of people say print's dead. Print's better than ever before because fewer people are using it, and therefore it's more powerful. But I agree with you on WordPress. I've put loads of hours into WordPress over the years, and then a new version comes out, and you've got to relearn all of it all over again. And this is one of the problems about open source software is that they keep improving it, which is great, keep improving it for free, which is great, but the training lags behind by a year or so, and it is, as you say, so frustrating.
Anyone else have any questions they want to ask? Okay, I think we have a question here. Martin, it's around accessibility capabilities. Probably accessible PDFs, I imagine. Maybe that's what that's about.
Okay, so PDF was actually originally developed partly with a view to accessibility. And when it was first introduced to me, I was working for a public sector arts organization. They said, you've got to use PDF because it's disability accessible. But over the years, disability accessibility has improved. It's part of the HTML5 requirement. Quark has had accessibility features for PDFs for, I think, 2 or 3 versions, but you have to fill them in. And this is the real problem about accessibility is there's a technical standard, but if you fill them in incorrectly, it's still inaccessible. I used to do a lot of work with people with visual impairments and also people who needed stuff in other languages, which is another kind of accessibility. And where we always have to go with this is ultimately you've got to go to the users and say, I've provided this to you in what my machine says. Is this an accessible format? Is it really an accessible format to you? And certainly visual impairment groups will be very quick to tell you that no, it was not accessible, but they'll give you the reasons for that as well. And I'm excited that Quark's got these features in it. I'm excited that they're also part of the HTML5 stuff, but it does not get away from the fact that you've still got to ask people, did it work for you? And if it didn't work for you, they're not wrong, we're wrong. We've got to get it right.
Okay, I've got a couple of other questions in the chat. One is asking about video tutorials available on how to use the website building tools in Quark. This is another longtime user, but they haven't really used it for web yet. Of course, you know, Martin, you do have some webinars and tutorials already available on QuarkXPress TV, which is our YouTube channel. And I think in one of those, you actually did build a website, didn't you?
Yeah, we did for that. That was, I think, version 2017 or 2018, and that was before Flex. So some of the things will still apply. It's actually really easy. We haven't done a video tutorial yet on the Flex features, which I think is exciting, but I think I need to do more preparation first because I've only found out what to do for what I want to do. So I've got a website running right now which has got video from YouTube playing directly in it. It's really easy to do. Like all interactive things, again, you've got to keep trying it. You've got to keep trying it. The difference between Apple's iOS and Android in the early days, I don't want to get into a flame war here about iOS or Android, but one of the differences was that the Apple guys would keep trying it for months and months and months until it just felt just right. And with interactivity, whatever you do, you've got to keep working on it. and also try it in different browsers, because one browser might display it very well and another browser doesn't work as well, and sometimes you've got to go back to the features that everything does. But we don't have a video tutorial yet on using it in Flex. We do have a video tutorial on using it in the earlier version and putting video in, and that might answer your questions, but maybe it's something to talk about at a later stage.
Well, and I have just jotted this down for some ideas for some future webinars or videos that we do need to produce. So thank you for that request, and we will work on getting some more information as far as that goes. A couple of other questions. Again, websites very popular. Can you build a website template in Quark and use it with WordPress for content management?
You can, and I've done it a couple of times. Now, you can't just press a button and WordPressify Quark. But there's an application called Pinegrow, which is the one I recommend. I'm sure there are others available, but this is the one I've tried it with. And they've actually got it down to a droplet where you can kind of drag and drop a functioning website. It is, you know, it's definitely possible. I have done it. I've done it for clients. By the time I've then explained to the client how to use WordPress, I'm often then beginning to realize that it would just be simpler for me to keep making the updates directly in Quark, because WordPress really is not as user-friendly as people use it a lot want to think. So yes, you definitely can do it. Yes, I have done it. I use Pinegrow to do it. Pinegrow's got special WordPress features, which sadly you've got to pay extra for, but it's a very price-efficient product. It's not really cheap, but it's certainly cheap for what it does. And it pretty much automates it. There's still quite a lot of video tutorials you need to do in order to get it right, because WordPress is actually quite a complicated to do things. You might also consider Concrete 5, which is a much easier and also much less hackable content management system, where you can much more easily transfer from an HTML5 page as Quark produces into Concrete 5. My own business's website uses Concrete 5, and just the stability is phenomenal. But you can do it in WordPress, for which I would use Pinegrow. Other editors may be available.
Okay, great. And it looks like we have another question here. This is from another veteran user of QuarkXPress, but there's a question about a page previewer within Quark. I do believe we have that, don't we?
Yeah, this is the page previewer for HTML5 or fixed layout ebooks or HTML5 publications, which is like a middle stage between a website and an ebook. Is there more to the question, or is it just that's the question?
That's the question. Does Quark have a file or page previewer?
Yeah, so there's a page previewer for the web, and obviously your print pages are already on the screen. In the file manager or in the Finder for Apple Mac, there should be a preview anywhere. If you're not seeing that, you can just, I think, turn it on the preferences, but previewing is widely there.
Okay, great. We're just about at our 40-minute time limit here. I want to thank everyone again for joining us, and I do want to remind you that we're meeting up here again next week at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and next Thursday's session is going to speak to not just designers, but really to business users, because, you know, design is not just about logos and fonts. There's more to it. So Martin, with his vast background and the work he's done with clients, he's going to talk to us about how you can use content design to improve your business, and especially to have greater profitability. So we do encourage you to join us again and register for that next week. And everybody have a great day or a great evening. Again, we appreciate it. Thank you.